Okay, we're back now to finish our discussion and content on verifiable evidence. We've talked about testimonials and we've talked about analogies, and right now we're going to talk about types of research. Research studies, the majority of the research that is published is quantitative, and case examples, which fall under a qualitative research. Um, so let's talk about case examples first. Sometimes these are called case studies, and this is the type of research where just a single example is used. Um, some like for example, there are studies of feral children. I don't know if you know what a feral child is, but it is a child that has been raised without socialization. So two examples that come to mind are this example of Jeannie. She was found in the 70s. I think she was found in 1970. She had been deemed by her father uh, as being mentally retarded, and so he withdrew all of his attention and love and caretaking. He basically kept her in a locked room, and oftentimes she was uh, either bound in a crib or tied to a toilet, and not none of the other children in the house were allowed to interact with her. She was found at about age 12 or 13, um, and was then taken into the care of the state of California, where she was researched and researched and researched by linguists and by child development experts, and given all sorts of interaction and all sorts of activities and all sorts of stimulation, and was actually never found to have been able to learn language. She never learned a first language. She was able to communicate non-verbally, but never learned language. The same was true of this child who was found in France about the late 1700s, found in the woods by hunters. And he was then brought in to be cared for by people, um, tried to escape back into the wilderness 8 times. And was very accustomed to being in the wilderness. Was accustomed to being in the cold without clothing, in the snow, frolicked in the snow without clothing. Had a lot of scars on his body, which it appeared that he had been in the woods for a long time with no social interaction with human beings. He was found at about right at the time of puberty, so they think he was 12 or 13. But he also, despite having multiple interactions after that time with linguists and scientists, he also was never able to learn language. So we have two cases of feral children, children who were raised in the wild or without social interaction, and neither of them ever learned language. So what does that tell us? Well, possibly it tells us that children need to have social interaction before the age of 12 in order to um, acquire language skills. Now, we can't say that for sure. It could be that both of these children um, were mentally retarded or had some kind of language problem that was specific to them. We can't say that all children who are raised without social interaction will have delays, but we can say that that's a possibility. So, um, and these cases actually give us information we could not get any other way. It's not like we're going to conduct a study and put children through this just to see if we're right. That would be unethical, and we don't do that. But case studies can give us information that can be quite strong. So the question that you need to ask as a critical reader about how strong is this evidence really is about the claim. In other words, does the evidence support proof? Does it demonstrate proof? Does it support a claim of possibility or a claim of probability? If these case studies were used to say children must interact with adults before the age of 12 to learn language, we can't say that this is good evidence. But if it's used to support the claim of it's possible that you have to interact before the age of 12 in order to acquire language, that is a strong use of this as evidence. So this is an example of, of how if we don't ask that question, does it support a claim of probability or possibility, we don't get at it. And we, in fact, can be really distracted by the case study because they're interesting. They're stories. They're remarkable in the fact that they don't happen all the time. So we have to be careful to not get distracted and to go to this question. Does it support a claim of probability or a conclusion of possibility? Research studies, and by this I mean mostly quantitative research studies, although qualitative studies do fall under this. The vast majority of what is published are quantitative studies. So, and there are different types that we can talk about. There are parts of research articles that if you're ever looking for a research article, you really should know these. And then I'm also going to talk about the 8 questions you should ask, and that part you'll definitely want to write down. So let me talk about the parts of a research article, and you can just skip through this next few minutes. I'll probably spend a minute on it. Uh, but it may help you, and I have found that other CRE 101 students really don't know this information. Every research article that is submitted for publication, particularly in a peer-reviewed journal, has to have this same format. You have to have a review of the literature so that there's an understanding of what has come before. You have to explain your methods. You have to then state your findings, and then you have to talk about the implications. What does it mean that you found this? And of course, at the end, you'll have a bibliography, which ties right back to this review of the literature. This can be really time efficient if you know this. And so when you're searching for articles, keep that in mind. I find that a lot of CRE students didn't know that before we start. There are different types of quantitative research. I am pretty sure you are well familiar with this type of research. If you have ever liked anything on Facebook, you've actually participated in one of these kinds of research, like a survey or a questionnaire or a poll. That's what that is. And they are gathering information from you when you do things like that. So let me talk a little bit about peer-reviewed versus non-peer-reviewed studies, because I have found that even though we know these terms, many CRE 101 students don't, or express to me that they don't really know the difference between these two things. If I am a researcher and I'm sending something in to be published, I've done a study and I want it to be published in my field, and I send it to a peer-reviewed journal, that means that my study, my report will be, oftentimes my name will be taken off of it, and it will be sent out to other experts in my field. They will read the research, they will ask the questions that need to be asked, they will make sure I've conducted it properly, they'll make sure that I have included the right studies in my review of the literature, they'll make sure that it will contribute something to the field, and then they'll decide whether or not it should get published. It's a peer review process. If I send it to a non-peer review study journal, then that means that it has been looked at by people that are not experts, at least not experts in my field. So I would have an easier time for sure getting it published, which is great for me. It may not be so great for you as a reader. So this is why it's important for critical readers to know, where did the article come from? How was the research conducted? Because if you find it in a peer-reviewed journal, you can be more confident that those questions of a critical reader have already been asked. If you find it in a non-peer-reviewed journal, like a popular magazine, for example, you as the critical reader, have to be the one to ask the questions. So that's why it's important. This can be really, really informative information, but you have to be cautious because of these questions. Maybe they're asking questions about what someone might do and not about what they would actually do. Maybe it wasn't random. Maybe the questions weren't worded properly. Again, if you're getting your information from peer-reviewed journals, you don't have to ask the questions. If you're getting it from a non-peer-reviewed study, non-peer-reviewed journal, you have to ask the questions. So here are the questions that you have to ask. There are 8 of them. You can stop the video at any time. I will go through these quickly and then we'll move on. What is the reputation of the source of the report? How about the sample? How large is it? How diverse is it? How random is it? If you don't know what these words mean, I will touch base with this when I talk about statistics. Again, a peer-reviewed journal will ask these questions before it gets published. Same with this question, how far can we generalize? Are the measurements or tools used biased? Again, a peer-reviewed journal will have asked these questions already. How selective is the writer in choosing the studies to include? I touched base on this already. Are the conditions in the study artificial? So that means, is it a lab rat or is it a human being that was studied? Have others been able to replicate the study? So that methodology section, was it explicit enough that someone else could try the study and see if they got the same results? That's what that's getting at. And is there any reason to distort the research? If excuse me, if I were going to do a research study about my own program, I would probably have some reason to distort the research and make sure that my own program comes out on top. That's really why you need to ask that question. Again, if you are getting your research studies from peer-reviewed journals, they have asked those questions. If not, if it's some study that's been documented in a newspaper, you, the critical reader, need to ask those questions. So I'm going to stop right here and let you continue in your Canvas class with some of the activities and homework assignments that you've been assigned. The next video that I make will be about non-verifiable evidence so that you can continue to answer the question, how good is the research?